everyone, and welcome to Shannonville Motorsport Park for the first national race of the 2017 Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike class. I'm your series announcer, Frank Wood. This national championship race is brought to you by the Trenton Military Family Resource Center, Dalton Timmis Insurance, Motovan, Honda, Magneti Marelli, and Dunlop. Well, here we go for the first round of the Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike National Championship 2017. We're at Shannonville Motorsport Park, the birthplace of champions, and our race director there, Andre Lalancette, sending the riders off for a sighting lap. We'll line them up on the same grid positions and launch them into their 18-lap National Championship final very shortly. Colin Fraser alongside as we watch these riders make their way. The big news, of course, in the off-season with the riders now in the sport bike class are using slicks instead of DOT tires. And
the other big news is the departure of Kenny Reedman, who's dominated this series recently for both Triumph and Kawasaki, and he will no longer take part, so we're going to have a new champion. Last 10 years, Jordan Zook, Jody Christie, and Reedman have won. Now we're looking at the grid. Row 5. Fearing and Errett are riders there, and having a look at rows 3 and 4, it's worth mentioning Alex Coelho, who was second overall in the series last year, has had to borrow a Yamaha to get out there, so a little stressful for Alex and not really the start of the season he wanted. Moving along at the rest, Elliot Vieira, who's the Guyanese racer, the Caribbean champion. He was also further back, and we look at the front, and the big news, of course, and a lot of people talking about this, is Christopher Garvey. He hasn't been with the series for a while, and he's put together a deal on a Kawasaki. He kind of dug out a storage or from a friend's front room kind of thing. So very interesting qualifying. And also Chris Brent, the rookie pro, our amateur champion from last year, doing wonderfully. Like, really, to be in the front row in your first race as a pro at the national level is outstanding.
And second fastest qualifier as well. Yeah, a brilliant start to a pro career. We talked about him briefly on the podium yesterday as West City Power Sports presented the checks for the fast top 3 qualifiers in this class, and it was great to have them come forward and help our racers a bit more with those big checks. So here we line up, and the field now under starters orders, and this year, of course, a little bit of other news, of course, is we have Riders' Choice have come on board as the sponsors, the official sponsors of the CSBK starting lights and the countdown clock. So the riders will be focusing on that Riders' Choice starting light and waiting for those lights to go off F1 style, I think is
there's our other rookie pro. He was late to the grid because they were working on that bike at the very last minute after a warm-up crash. That is
Jacob Shaw-Leary,
and they had some kind of clutch problem with that Honda. But another rookie pro, one of our front runners with Brent from last year, and doing a really good job. In fact, 4 Hondas in the top 7, so a real renaissance for Honda. And here we go, Frank.
Well, speaking of renaissances, look at the man on pole position, Christopher Garvey, after a hiatus of I think it's been 2 or 3 years now since we've seen him turn a wheel in anger on the racetrack, and he came out and set fast qualifying. He was so overwhelmed, Colin, he was almost in tears, and Garvey has the lead now. Tommy Casas has slipped in behind him. Looks like, no, he wasn't going to make a move that early, and Chris Brandt is in 3rd spot already. Rookie Chris Brandt getting a great start. Casas looks to the inside as they head into turn number 3. And again, not making a move very early in this race. Of course, we've got 18 laps to go, so these guys rather have to pace themselves. Picking up on our 4th place, a rider, I believe that to be Louis Rafa on the number 76 machine.
I think you have that right, Frank. So first lap here, fairly long race at the Nationals. Lots of pressure, tension, because you haven't raced and you've been working on your program to get ready. We haven't had much warm weather, and we haven't talked really at all about Kazaz, who's now in 2nd. He just got back from riding with Valentino Rossi in a Yamaha program in Europe. We're watching Kazaz on board with Garvey, and he won the regional at Shannonville a week ago.
That's right.
So you could pretty much say he's our favorite going in, and he's in 2nd, pacing Garvey. I don't actually know if these guys have ever been on the track together at the same time. They're probably
think they have,
feeling each other out.
No, I'm quite sure you're right on that. Kaz is having won the Race Super Series regional race last weekend. I thought he was going to get on the move again there now, but he didn't do it. He's right on Garvey's back wheel. Garvey on the number 71 machine. I wanted to comment that Kaz is on his way to victory. Had to chase Elliot Vieira, the Guyanese rider. He he actually led this the Pro Sport Bike race in the Super Series event, and unfortunately Vieira had an off-track excursion that saw him fall, and Casas was able to continue on to the win.
So let's have a look here, Frank. I was waiting to see what Casas would do in the draft, but Garvey did the veteran pro thing and ducked kind of inside and made it a little tougher. I don't feel like Casas is in a hurry to make the pass, and he's looking around. Garvey is riding pretty aggressively, and that bike's a little loose, and I think for a middleweight displacement bike, that Kawasaki has some pretty serious horsepower.
Well, I'm sure Garvey is quite aware that the number 46 Yamaha is right on his back wheel. He's probably getting the pit signals for that, and yet on the Fabi straightaway, that back straightaway, he's making no effort at all to weave to the right that we quite often see to break away to make sure that the rider behind him can't make a use of that soft air.
Into turn 1, and Garvey is not blocking or anything. A little loose on the transition into 2, and you can see Casas go slightly to the right, looking up the inside. That's a pass that used to work really well, but this very fast right-hander, which is a pretty fun turn, is very rough these days. It's a hard place to pass. So we see on board there's Casas, and he, again, doesn't seem to be hanging it out just yet. But we should mention they're pulling away from Brent, who's doing a great job of holding on to third in his first ever pro national race. And here we go on board, and of course we've got a fairly older model Kawasaki, a Ninja that's still quite fast.
I'm picking up Mitch Card in the background there. I think he just put some really serious pressure on Chris Brent. Brent holding on to third spot, and of course Mitch Card out of Ripley, Ontario, on that Yamaha, the distinctive, very easy to spot that motorcycle in brilliant red, and of course Mitch Card himself in red letters. There he is.
And it's also worth mentioning Card, who hasn't raced full-time with us since he won the amateur championships. Last year at Motorsport was outstanding in this class, and he is another guy who over the winter was touted as a favorite and certainly expected to race Casas perhaps for the championship, but didn't have a good time. Actually had a lot of problems yesterday, so if he can dig out, this may turn out to be important, although it's hard to imagine anyone's going to get up to these guys because the pace is good right from the start. And I got to say, I don't think Garvey's ever led a national, but he looks pretty good doing it. And again, I was going to say, Kawasaki, an older bike, very, very fast bike, dominant bike in its day. But that Yamaha is actually a brand new bike, a new model R6. So it's interesting to see the comparison in middleweight motorcycles.
I'm told that Kawasaki is the same motorcycle that Jordan Zoke rode to the sport bike title when he rode for Canadian Kawasaki Motors, and the thing was sitting in the lobby of Canadian Kawasaki Motors up until last week. Look at Casas. Casas is starting to become a bit of a paint job here.
Well, I think he's having a look, and he's starting to weigh what could work with Garvey, and you've got a bit of the Garvey story combined with a bit of a Zoke story, but it was a friend of Garvey's. That bike was rebuilt a few years ago and then just sat, and Garvey decided he would try and go after it, and just in the last few days he's got it out, ridden it once, and decided to try the national. So nobody, including Garvey, knew he was coming. So and qualifying on pole, I think, sends a clear message about what he and that motorcycle are capable of.
So that Zoke pedigree that what I was told about is not an accurate comment.
Well, apparently the bike was rebuilt after a huge crash. It was an ex-factory Kawasaki, and it's been rebuilt by some factory team people. There. And you look here, and I think if it plays out the way it has, these bikes are pretty evenly matched, and Garvey's bike really puts the power down well, so he is not having to ride defensively. He has a decent lead on the longest straight on the backstretch.
Yeah, he has a very strong pull coming out of turn number 10, and Casas is able to make up the distance mostly on braking skill coming into turn 11. I wanted to comment, Colin, when we get up on the front straightaway again, that Andre Lalancette had a radar gun on the front straightaway, and he was clocking Tommy Casas at 119 miles an hour on a sport bike, and that is not our longest straightaway. I would wished rather that we'd had that radar gun on the back straight.
I think the interesting thing is always how hard these bikes accelerate. Even if you're into really powerful cars, these bikes are very light, and the fun of riding them is how aggressively they accelerate. But of course, these guys are used to how they perform, and their only concern is to try and either maintain the lead or get by. And there you can see Garvey actually got a little out of hand in terms of his line. He's picked it back up here, but this may offer a different opportunity for the Yamaha to try the draft. Let's see what happens on the backstretch, and again, it doesn't seem to be an opportunity, really.
When we get on board with Tommy Casas, the distance between him and Garvey seems greater than what we see on the racetrack itself. You see obviously Kazas is only just a couple of bike lengths behind, but there again you see on the on-board camera rather on Christopher Garvey's Kawasaki, looking back at Tommy Kazas on the Yamaha, the distance seems somewhat exaggerated. In through Allen's corner, Kazas still has yet to show a wheel to Garvey, and I'm sure Garvey's starting to feel a little bit apprehensive about the speedy man from Peterborough, Ontario, on that Parts Canada-sponsored Peterborough Cycle Salvage Yamaha.
I think it's important to consider that this isn't a car race. These guys don't have rear-view mirrors. Garvey's pretty busy. He's probably not that worried yet.
He'll be getting pit signals, though.
Yeah, but it's not really how your mind works on a motorcycle, in my experience, and I think the best solution is just to keep your pace aggressive and not let the other guy get into your head, which is of course much easier said than done. You can see Garvey still having a little bit of trouble there in the corner before the hairpin, but when we get to this part of the track, he does almost always get a perfect drive, and that's key in terms of holding him off. And of course, you're not allowed to weave to break the draft, but you're right, Kazaz is pretty close.
Seems that he's just sort of pacing himself. He's running a very professional race, Colin. Something that obviously has come with the years of experience. He has been a pro rookie in the past, and you mentioned the experience he had in Italy with Valentino Rossi's ranch and what have you. That no doubt has helped stoke a little bit of inner fire in this young lad. And he is devoid of a national championship win thus far in his career, so I'm sure he has that in mind as well.
Well, it seems like what's happened with Kazaz is that they've done a lot with a little, and they've attracted some attention, but they've been, hitting maybe a little...
Kazas is there?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Unfortunately, that's that same inside line that just doesn't seem to work anymore because that piece of track has become so bumpy. And then here, Garvey doesn't even bother really to pick up the line. Well, that time was a little inconsistent in this part of the track, and really great shot. Okay, now we can see this Kawasaki put down the power, and it is impressive. And of course, you remember Alex Welsh and Jordan Zoke and Brett McCormick and the people who rode this version of the Kawasaki. It was an extremely successful motorcycle, and some of the arguable best middleweight bikes in the history of our series were these Mike Crompton, Richard Winter, Harold Surian built Kawasaki's, and you're right that this bike is built from those parts.
The Canadian Kawasaki Motors team so dominant back in those years, and of course, as we noted, the number of Kawasaki's in this race, we have 5 Hondas and 6 Kawasaki, so it is obviously a good weapon of choice for many of the pro riders in the Mopar CSBK series within the Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike class. Mitch Card was still in sight, but he is quite a distance back from these two who are holding the race up front here, and unless Card can get some luck heading his way or perhaps up his lap times. I want to talk a bit about the fact that he's on his B bike, of course, and he had some problems yesterday that saw him win an award at the riders meeting, in that he had to do a bunch of scrambling in order to get that bike on track.
There we can see once again Garvey nice and tidy coming out of the last turn, and yeah, it would have been great. Yeah, you can see Card is a solid third. You could see that long shot down the back straight, but he just had too much to overcome early on, and he got moving quickly. Could he, in theory, do this pace? Close, but he didn't get a lot of quality practice. To be fair, with the weather and how the spring has been in Ontario, quality practice was very, very hard to come by. And, Kazaz and our Guyanese racer put on a show a week ago, but Garvey wasn't there, Card wasn't there, so there were a lot of variables. We didn't know what's coming, but there we go, halfway. You heard the call, so now the race could become official. The lap bonuses start to come into play, so now I think you're going to see things change.
All of a sudden we have a brand new card game. They've shuffled the cards, shall we say, in this contest. Now we get on board with Tommy Kazas once more, and we're following Christopher Garvey up into turn number 9. We'll set him up and head up into the hairpin once more. Garvey taking what you have described as a perfect line through that corner, and Tommy Kazas just about touches slicks with Garvey mid-corner.
And as you pointed out, Frank, this is the first race with the new Dunlop slicks for this class, so we're the same as in the American Moto America series, these middleweight bikes on slicks. Doesn't make a huge difference, a little bit better probably for the racers, but looks to me like Kazaz is shopping.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little excited here. Tommy's got something happening, perhaps not yet on the racetrack, but most certainly between his ears, he's starting to think this one out, and Garvey is starting to find himself in a bit of a pressure cooker now.
So we're one lap past halfway, and it's important to start considering bonus points and things like that, and they do come into play at this point. And of course, after halfway, the race could become official. Let's see if this inside
Tommy
pass
Kazas
could work.
Taking a run at Garvey now. It looks like he's going to go to the ins. No, he doesn't do it. He gets into his wheel tracks, and he's quite content to follow again. He's got to make a move pretty soon if he's going to do it at all. Because rest assured, Garvey is not going to be satisfied with second spot. Not after that fast qualifier and the emotions that went with it. And of course, we have a lapper that we're coming up on that may factor into this. Whoa, moved way over to the side. Rather a gentlemanly move, Colin, to stay out of the way of the fast runner. So I suspect he received a blue flag from the CRCA officials up at turn 10.
And it's great when riders understand that they're not the only bike on the track. This is a national race, and you don't want to be a person who affected the outcome. And Garvey is manhandling that bike in a very determined manner, and he looks good. He hasn't really seen a wheel from Kazaz yet. And, you know, at this point, we're all starting to wonder, is Kazaz going to show him something and rattle him? Hasn't done it yet, and I think we're really overdue. I'm surprised.
Garvey's Kawasaki does something that Tommy Kazas' Yamaha is not doing, and that is lifting the front wheel. There he goes, up alongside, cleanly by. Beautiful move by Tommy Kazas. He had that time, and I think he probably had that lined up about 2 or 3 laps ago.
Well, you know, I've been watching him shop on that one, and I really didn't think the track was going to offer that pass, but he got it pretty early, and that made it a little bit easier, but that was still, you're right, absolutely. And here we see coming out of 2, and Kazaz is lining it up, and he's cheating to the right. Garvey doesn't know he's there, so he's committed much earlier than you expect. Here's a different angle, and there's a lot of camber to the road there, and Kazaz is using that to help him put the power down.
Just like a berm. You
could argue that maybe Garvey was not expecting anything like this, and he gets the pass done surprisingly early, and again, very, very bumpy in this part of the track. Our new leader is a little bit tight, but he is pulling away fast.
Holy cow, has he ever. Now, I noted when they were coming out of turn 10 that he enjoyed a bit of a cushion there, and then Garvey didn't seem to be wanting to return the favor. He didn't even stay in his wheel tracks down the back straightaway to pick up the draft. It's almost as though, oh, well, Tommy's in front. I guess we'll give up on this one.
Well, I think, you know, second place at a national is not giving up by any means, but you know, the trick on a pass is to put the hammer down, not to look back, not to give the guy any hope, decimate him, put it a really aggressive lap, and convince him that you have more pace. And that seems to be exactly what's happened here. And what you'd like to do is kind of suck the air out of the race. It's not what you and I want, because we'd like to call a battle back and forth. But you know, it's interesting. A guy who's never won a national yet, maybe he's going to win this one, but his technique is just about flawless. I think Jordan Zoke would respect this effort.
Tommy was doing exactly on this run down the back straightaway, Colin. He was doing exactly what I was criticizing Garvey for not doing, and that is swinging way to the right and getting away from the rider that's tailing you. Get away from him and give him the hard air to push through.
So let's talk race tactics again. You're Garvey. You've been scrubbed off to an extent. There is hope, but what your big hope is up in front, there's traffic, right? And you never can tell, and it does get very bumpy offline around Shannonville. So Garvey's going to hope that there's a little miscue or a little too much caution from our first-time leader. Now remember, the first and second guys, neither of them ever won a pro national.
The trouble is, of course, when you talk about traffic up front, is we don't have groups of traffic, so individuals are going to be very easy for our race leaders to get by if they have the momentum to do so, and I would suggest they will have that. But unless you get a group of riders to interfere with Tommy Kazas' run, it's going to be very difficult to slow him up.
Good shot on board from our Moto Van camera, which showed what it's like to just pull a little bit to the right, and that's another way to be very courteous to the leaders. Just hold the normal line and let him go slightly off your line and find your way by that. Very little drama in that, and it's always nice to pass on a straightaway. It's a lot less work, and you're not trying to deal with different lines and sealer and pavement and seams and all those things that make you worry about your traction. And hasn't been very warm, hasn't been a lot of heat soak into the track, so I'm sure the guys are a little bit worried about traction. And if anything, it looked like, to me, Garvey was maybe not so sure about his front tire as he was early in the race, and that's going to be a little bit nerve-wracking.
15 laps in, Talk a little bit about tires, Colin. We mentioned that the slicks are being used, the Dunlop slicks are being used. So now when we refer to lap records in the record book, is this a case where we have an asterisk in that the last lap record was set on Dunlop DOTs, this one's on slicks?
Well, I think you need to be careful. There's a march of progress with all the tires all the time, every year, sometimes race by race or event by event, they can change. So there could be an asterisk regularly, and the DOT tires you speak of were pure racing tires with a couple of grooves in them. So these tires perhaps a little better, perhaps a little more durable, and also have they come more in line with the tires on the Superbike? Sure, but it's not a day and night difference. But I think the riders prefer this tire. But what they would prefer more is more heat in the track, and we just haven't had that this year. There's nothing anybody can do about that. But warmer conditions and particularly more heat soak in the track would give everybody more confidence. And so far this weekend at Shannonville, the lap times have been good, all things considered, but not ultimate pace good.
Casas is laying a pummeling on these guys. You see the distance when we last saw Garvey in the background there. Look at the huge distance now. Wow, this is an exceptional ride by Tommy Casas. He is really, you mentioned it, Colin, that once you made the pass, get going and really try to demoralize your opposition. And boy, Christopher Garvey has got to be somewhat demoralized by leading this race, being fast qualifier yesterday, and having getting beat up like this by Tommy.
Well, it's interesting because as coming off the back straight there, and the rider who many figured would be his ultimate rival for the championship and may still play out that way, Card is a whole straightaway behind him. Mm-hmm. No matter how you look at it, Card probably will be satisfied with third given how things have been going, but this is a good start, and Card won twice at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
2 laps to go.
And, really kind of announced his presence as a threat nationally. And there's a few young guys, and there's very little opportunity for advancement on new motorcycles, and they're fighting for those opportunities. And we've got new guys, particularly Brent, coming up, and Shaw O'Leary, and there's a lot of good young talent. Canada's doing a good job of producing these guys. The problem is there's not a lot of opportunity to keep marching forward on your career.
And now we have a Guyanese import as well, of course, Clyde Nagakeen, a famous racer from back in the day, helping Elliot Vieira get into this country. And I'm sure that once that young lad gets his game sorted out, that he's going to be a factor. And I'm sure that we're going to see him in this kind of footage not too far into this season.
Well, and ironically, Vieira, who I think has a lot of potential and is an exciting guy to watch, has a Kawasaki extremely similar to Garvey's, and that's a bike that's really showing just how strong that design was. And back in the day, last lap, and it's this is not the story of the season, but it's a good start for our veteran of the Rossi school.
Yes. You mentioned Mitch Card, and I reflect back to the footage that we saw from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park from last year's Liqui Moly sport bike doubleheader features. In both races, he and Kenny Reedman were just absolutely body checking one another. It was some of the most exciting racing we've ever seen. And coming out of Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, my hope was, boy, I hope Mitch Card is going to be on the circuit full time next year. And he is.
He's a great addition, and over the course of the series, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Kazaz has more experience at this level, at the tracks, racing pro, and he seems to have the resources this year that he could make a go of it. But 6 more races after this one, but it looks right now like he's got it.
On board with Tommy once more. Now we have a look at him coming down into Allen's corner 13 on this racetrack layout. Now into the final corner. The right-hander is knee puck just grazing off the surface. Checkered flag comes out, and Tommy Casas has scored his very first professional motorcycle race win here in Canada. Boy, hats off to the young rider on that Yamaha, and he is somewhat happy about that as he receives congratulatory waves from the CRCA officials. Now he comes around, he's going to stuff that checkered flag in his boot for the very first time, and you can see many of the people along pit wall, including the Canadian Kawasaki team there, Kenny Reedman's Sturgis Cycle and Reedman management team, congratulating Tommy Casas. A lot of people, myself included, glad to see this happen, Colin.
So start of his third pro national season, brand new Yamaha R6. Somebody had to throw it down and show what was possible. Of course, there's only one guy now who could have a perfect season. His first win, He now has a slim points lead. It's going to be interesting to see who comes to join him. I expect some of the races will be much closer than this one, but you can't take this away, and I think there's got to be a huge weight lifted off his shoulders because he's been there or thereabouts. Garvey, brilliant for second, and we didn't even know he was coming a few days ago.
Yeah,
Card makes it up to third. Brent, what a job for a guy in his first pro race. Rafa, who had a few problems. Fifth is still a decent effort, and of course that's the second Honda. Then McKay, we should have been talking about him if we'd seen him on his Kawasaki. Shaw O'Leary, who is on another Honda. Renowski, who's on a Suzuki, and Alex Coelho, who of course was second last year on a borrowed Yamaha.
Mitch Card, what a heck of a race that was for you. What a weekend thus far.
Yeah, you know, you blow a clutch yesterday and you just come out as strong as you can today. I knew my launch was everything today. I got up front, it was awesome, and I tried to hang with the fast guys in front of me, but they checked out. I couldn't hang with them, so I just rode my own race. It was awesome.
Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, third place finisher, Mitch Card. We move over now to Christopher Garvey, the Deer Slayer. Christopher, you had the lead for a while, and then Tommy caught you up. You didn't fight back.
Not Deer Slayer, Frank. We said Nature Boy. I'm not a Deer Slayer, but yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, it was a great race. Tommy and everybody else rode well. I'm really proud of Tommy and happy for him, and I'm just happy to be here. It was Jim and I did a track day Tuesday night. We just got the bike Friday night, and I said, Jim, do you want to race this weekend? And he said, F yeah. So we came out. So a huge thanks to everybody that's helped.
Well said, Christopher Garvey. And a bike tuned by Jim Hu. Tommy Casas, congratulations, young man. Talk about your race.
Thanks, Frank. You know, it's been a long time coming, and I had a whole lot of help getting the bike fully set up. Right from the start, I felt much better, and I knew I had more in the tank. And the start of the race was well, just getting down to pace, and then eventually I was able to get by Chris and just put my head down. You know, the trip to Italy that I had sure is it's putting into work. I learned a lot there, and it's contributing to my racing here. And hopefully we can get away with it in the end with the championship.
We'll have to send a note to Valentino and let him know how you did. Ladies and gentlemen, there is your podium. As much as we appreciate the sound and the noise of motorcycles, there's nothing quite like a grandstand full of super fans. Once more, please, ladies and gentlemen, Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike. Oh, that's the one. That's the one we were waiting for. Card, Garvey, and Casas.
Looking at our point standings, and they pretty much mirror the race results with one round so far. Of course, Garvey is looking a little better than he might because he got that pole. Laps led also count. Card doing okay, but he's going to need to do a little bit more or he will get scrubbed off. Brent, again, brilliant effort for a rookie pro, looking down through the group. And of course, I think we had 16 entries, and that's pretty much a high water mark in the last few years in this class and shows a lot of growth. And of course, all the young guys, really encouraging to see that much young talent coming up to the front.
Well, Colin, we're headed off to Grand Bend for round number 2, and that, my friend, is card country. So things could very much change there. So that wraps it up from round 1 from Shannonville Motorsport Park. Thanks for being with us. See you next round.